Sir, just a minute. I'd like to introduce you to the participants.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. A very warm welcome to all my participants to the session 2 of the first day of this 1 week faculty development program on outcome-based education and the NBA accreditation process. This session is dedicated to outcome-based NBA accreditation and SAR. We have amongst us Professor B.S. Pabla, Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, NITTR Chandigarh. Dr. Pabla is the ex-principal of Chandigarh College of Engineering and Technology, Chandigarh. He is currently working with the Mechanical Engineering Department in National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research, Chandigarh. He is also the author of many books as well as the owner of numerous patents. His research area includes additive manufacturing, metal cutting technologies, as well as outcome-based education and NBA accreditation. So I welcome you, sir, today to this session, and I request you to commence the session. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kritika Vasan, and all the management, Dr. Hoda and his team for inviting me to this lecture on outcome-based NBA accreditation and SAR. I also welcome all the participants who have joined. I don't know from how many institutions you are there, but I see huge numbers, 62, 65 numbers who joined the lecture. So I will stick to outcome-based NBA accreditation and SAR. I'm sure you must have been discussed what accreditation is.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. You can put your slides on slideshow mode.
Okay, hi.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you are all familiar with what I have put it on this thing.
Yes, sir. It is the first slide is visible. It is on slideshow mode now.
Okay. Now, in the previous session or during the inauguration, people must have talked to you about what accreditation is and why do we need it. And there is something called Washington Accord. I'm sure if you have not discussed this, so please do let me know. I can devote 5-7 minutes on this also, because India as a whole is a member of Washington Accord. Now we are what we call it as full-fledged members. We are permanent signatories to this. We became signatories in 2014, and this has been reviewed last year, and this membership has been extended for another 5 years. Now let us see. Let's come to what outcome-based NBA accreditation is, and what do they expect from us? What NBA expects when they come to you, or when you apply for that? What do they expect from this? If you have any questions, because you may not be allowed to ask questions in between, please do write in the chat box. I will come to the chat box in between or at the end of the session, and we will discuss all your queries, right? Now let's see what is this. The present system of accreditation being followed by NBA is called outcome-based accreditation. Why do we call it outcome-based accreditation? Because this is based on outcome-based education. Outcome-based accreditation is based on outcome-based education. Now let's see what this outcome-based education is. Outcome-based education focuses on learning outcomes in comparison to the previous system, where the focus was on giving inputs without much concern about the learning outcomes. Now this sentence has deep meaning. Outcome-based education system is basically a learner-centered system. That means the focus is the learner. Learner means a student. Whereas in previous system, we were focusing, we are still doing that actually, but we were focusing on teacher, what the teacher teaches, whether he takes classes, whether he conducts practicals or not. Now we were very little concerned or very less concerned about what the student will learn. Why should he do this? Let's say you want the student to write a program on C language. Why should he write? Why should a mechanical engineering student write program on program in C language? We were not telling, neither we were writing. So in outcome-based education, what we do is we write the expected outcomes at the course design stage. In fact, when we want to start the program, when I want to start a BE in mechanical engineering, I should know why I should be starting a program in mechanical engineering. What will I get? What my student will be able to do? That is the idea, that I will write down that after going through this program of 4 years, my students will be able to do such things. That means at the end of 4 years, my students will be able to do some tasks. They will have some knowledge, skills, and attitude. Those are called program outcomes, or in short, we call them as POs. Right? Then you see that will come only when the students have cleared all the 4 years. That means they are almost out, or they are already out of the college, but they are fresh. Now, similarly, we have course outcomes. Course is basically a subject. So, for each subject, we have course outcomes. That means, after going through this subject, I am teaching them a subject on air conditioning. Why should I teach them air conditioning subject? I am a mechanical engineer. Okay, so that is why I am telling air conditioning. Why should I teach them air conditioning subject on refrigeration and air conditioning? Because I want them to do something, to be capable of doing something. What something? Let's say I say, after going through this subject on refrigeration and air conditioning or air conditioning, my students will be able to, let's say, design an air conditioning system for a given situation. Now this outcome, this is one of the outcomes, course outcomes. I can have 4 to 6 course outcomes for each course, for each subject, right? You are going to discuss all these things in the next 4 or 5 days. Now this outcome, 4 to 6 outcomes you write for each subject. And the students are told before you start with teaching with the subject. Before I start teaching refrigeration, air conditioning or air conditioning subject to my students, I tell them that you will be tested on these 4 to 6 course outcomes. You will be asked to select an air conditioning system for a given situation. You will be asked to maintain, how to maintain a air conditioning system, a central air conditioning system. You will be asked to design a air conditioning system. Like that, I can define 4 to 6. The students also know what they are expected to do after going through this course. You see, some people say, sir, you are telling the questions to the students that I will ask you this. No, I am not telling these questions. I am telling that this will be the outcome required. You should be able to design an air conditioning system. Now, for what conditions? I am not telling them. That means they should be ready. That okay, this is a classroom. You design. These are the dimensions. This one side is exposed to the sun, and this is my number of people who can sit in this room. So Depending upon what I give it to the students, they should be able to calculate what type of air conditioner. Let's say I say this is a conference hall where I cannot tolerate any noise. So I want the students that they should select, let's say, a minimum a split air conditioner, not a window air conditioner, because window air conditioners are noisy. And they should be able to calculate the tonnage, like we have 1.5 tons, 1 ton, 3 tons, or type of AC you want. Now that is not a guesswork. When my students select an AC, that is not a guesswork. That is based on some calculations, some fundamental principles. How to calculate the heat load, how many times the door is opening, how much is the leakage from the room. So if I tell the students that I will be asking you, I will be testing you on this, they will prepare for this, right? And it will not be like 5 out of 8 questions what we are doing. It will not be like that. It will be all the students have to know everything. Assessment and evaluation is also done to see the attainment of program outcomes. If I say assessment, evaluation, and evaluation is the weakest link, is the most critical link, which due to which our system is not acceptable. Industry is saying that your students cannot perform anything, right? But because we are not assessing our students, we are not evaluating our students properly, and we are just distributing the certificates. If we can improve our assessment and evaluation system, probably many things will improve. So in outcome-based education, there is a well-defined study, assessment and evaluation system, so that if I evaluate or you evaluate or a third person evaluates, the outcomes will be same, the result will be the same. But it is not subjective, it is all objective, because the criteria is defined. Criteria is predefined that, okay, you have to come to this level, only then we will be able to give you a certificate that you are a mechanical engineer, you are a computer engineer. You should be able to write a program to solve a complex engineering problem. Then only I will say that you know part for this computer program. Course outcomes are defined for each course. That is what I told you. So course outcomes are defined for each course, and assessment is also done to measure the attainment of course outcomes only. That means the assessment is done to measure whether the students have attained the required course outcomes. I wanted that my student will be able to design an air conditioning system for a given situation. So I will have a question paper which will assess the attainment of this outcome. Generally, there will be 4 to 6 course outcomes, COs, and everybody should learn all. The level of learning can be good, very good, excellent, but they will be to some minimum level. Everybody will know it. It is not like that my computer student says that, sir, I don't know programming. I have seen that situation also. But they have to know programming. They should be able to do programming, but maybe the proficiency level may vary. Some minimum level will be there everywhere. So what is outcome-based? Outcome-based education means clearly focusing and organizing everything in an educational system around what is essential for all students to be able to do successfully. That means outcome-based education clearly focuses on what? What the student, all the students will be able to do successfully at the end of their learning experience. That means this is a time frame is there. Learning experience is basically 4 years of degree and 3 years of diploma to 2 years of PG. And all the students will be able to do. That means there are some minimum standards, but beyond that people can go. So that focus is on the students, focus is on the learning outcomes, and after that what you do, you arrange everything to facilitate that the students learn what we intended them to learn. So if you again read this, outcome-based education means clearly focusing on what? What is essential for all students to be able to do successfully at the end of their learning experiences, and then organizing everything in an education system around this. This means that you start with a clear picture of what is important for all students to be able to do, then organizing curriculum based on the outcomes, because we have defined what are the outcomes in the first paragraph. We have defined what the student will be able to do after given period of time. So you have defined it. Then based on that you make the curriculum. You draw the competencies, and from the competencies you draw the syllabus, this content to be covered, and then you arrange it into the number of subjects, decide the hierarchy, in which hierarchy they will go. What maybe there are some subjects which are prerequisites to other subjects. So once you have defined the curriculum based on the outcomes, plan your teaching learning process, plan your instructional activity, so that we facilitate the learning of the students. Learning of the students means what we wanted the students to learn. So we want to facilitate that. We want to help the student to learn. We want to have some practical classes. We want to have some theoretical classes. We wanted to have some tutorial classes. Maybe we want to have some instruction, this industrial attachment of the students, right? So once you have done that, you have designed the curriculum based on what we want the students to be able to perform. You have defined the teaching learning process, and then assessment. How will you assess? How will you assess whether the students have learned what we wanted or not? That means we should have a well-defined assessment system, so that we know whether the students have learned or not. So in a nutshell, this is the outcome-based education. That means based on outcomes, design the curriculum, design and document the curriculum very clearly. Where many times I go for NBA visits, I see that they will say, okay, experiment on such and such equipment. Now student doesn't know what to do. We are poorly defining the curriculum. We are poorly defining the outcomes also. During this next 4 days, somebody will discuss with you the how to design the curriculum, how to design the question paper, right? So we have to very seriously see how to design the curriculum, what are the different approaches, instructional approaches, and how assessment in outcome-based education is different from the normal assessment. So you will have to study, probably somebody will discuss Bloom's taxonomy with you, how to write the sentences, how to write the question papers, how to write the instructions. Because once you make a question, the language you are using in the question will define actually what you want. It is not a casual approach. Once you write define, it has something different meaning. When once you say discuss, it is different meaning. Once you say compare, it has different meaning. So we have to very carefully do the question paper, and marking also. We should have a marking plan also, assessment plan also. So outcome-based education operates on what do you want the students to do? What is that? That is program outcomes. What do you want the students to learn? And why? Why do you want them to learn it? Why should they learn it? I will ask a mechanical engineering student, he says, why should I learn mathematics? Right? This problem you must be facing also. Because students say, mathematics is not my area of work, but we have to tell them that without mathematics, you cannot do anything. Without chemistry, mechanical engineering cannot go ahead. They have to learn about materials. They have to learn the chemistry of the materials. Right? How can you best help students who learn? Right? We have defined the outcomes. We have defined the why of it. And that means how can you best help students who learn it? How will you make it happen that the students will learn it? That is, first we will define what we want to teach them. That is the curriculum document with program outcomes and course outcomes. Then we will develop a teaching learning process. What teaching learning process? But it may not be a single, like what we are doing, teach chalk and board. No, it has to be hybrid. There are so many new techniques now which we are talking about. So we have to integrate all this into our curriculum and teaching learning process. And how will you know what they have learned? You see, we have defined the curriculum, we have defined the program outcomes, we have defined the teaching learning process also. And we have given the instructions. We are through with the teaching of the subject. Now, how will you know whether the students have learned or not? That means we should have a strongly study assessment and evaluation system. We should have a very well defined. And also we define the program outcomes clearly. So POs, provide learning activities to achieve the POs. That means what I have been telling, that we will have a teaching learning process. Assessment of the outcomes by a well-defined assessment system. The assessment system has to be well-defined and documented. And what next comes in OBE is that we will have a continuous improvement system to check whether, first we will analyze the outcomes, the attainment of outcomes, then how to improve the attainment, right? How to improve the attainment. I wanted that 70% of my student will be able to do design of air conditioning system. What actually have to happen? Only 60% people have attained that outcome, and they attained that competency. But so I analyze where is the problem, whether there is a problem in the curriculum, whether there is a problem in the teaching learning process, or there is some problem somewhere in the assessment system itself. So you take corrective action. Sometimes it may happen that I had planned that 70% of my students will be able to do a particular task to a certain level. But actually what happens? Let's say 75% people achieve that. Even there I am not going to leave it. I will again analyze. Was it a very lenient teaching assessment? If I feel that everything is fine, what I'll do is, okay, last time I had a target of 70% students attaining such and such level, but they have 75% have achieved the level which is beyond my target level. So what I'll do, next time I will say, okay, either I will say level 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say I have defined rubrics will come, and maybe somebody will talk, Dr. Grover will talk about this. But what I will do is, I will raise my requirement. I will say, no, 80% of the students, next time 80% of the students should attain the required level, and I should work for it. I should work for it that 80% of the students will attain required competency level. Now, outcome-based education, basically this is the hierarchy. You start with vision and mission of the institute and the department. Then you write what is vision and mission? Somebody should talk on this. Vision is basically what you expect your institution to be in the long term. Long term may be 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. But it is normally a longer horizon. Maybe we talk about 10 years. Right? And what is the mission? Mission is how I want to take this institution to the defined vision. I want that my institute will be preferred institution within my state. How do I do it? I say I will provide state-of-the-art laboratories. I will collaborate with industry. I will have live projects. I will have updated and experienced faculty. So that becomes the way to achieve the vision. Next is program educational objectives. What is this? Program educational objectives are basically where I expect my students to be after, let's say, 4 or 5 years of passing out. The students have already passed out. But where do you expect your students to be? What you expect your students to be doing? How you expect your students to be contributing to the organization where they are working after 4 or 5 years? 4 or 5 years, that means when they started in the immediately after passing out your course or degree, after 4 years of studying at your institution, they must have started working in a particular area. But I want that after 4 or 5 years, they should be working in multidisciplinary areas, or they should be leading the group of persons as a team leader, or they should be contributing in multidisciplinary project as team member, or they should have moved up in the ladder or horizontally or in the organization. So it can be horizontal or vertical movement. Next is the program outcomes. Program outcomes, as I said, is what you expect your students to be capable of doing immediately after passing out, after 4 years. That you define. Course outcomes, after studying each course, each subject, what should be the capabilities? What capabilities they will develop? Maybe you are teaching English, communication skills. They should be able to prepare a report. They should be able to write a project, right? They should be able to give a presentation in front of the audience, maybe in front of the class itself. So if you see this program outcomes, if you have gone through NBA website, these program outcomes are basically have been defined by National Board of Accreditation. You can go through the POs. They are irrespective of the discipline. They are not referring to any discipline like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. They are generic. That generic means they say the students after passing out this BTech program will be able to use basic mathematics, basic sciences, basic engineering to solve engineering problems. So no discipline is coming here. But when I study it, I see that I am from mechanical department. I say the students should be able to solve problems connected with mechanical engineering using basics of science, basics of mathematics, basics of engineering, and maybe general science, general subjects like humanities and all. So the program outcomes are written by NBA. There are 12 POs for UG programs, and Course outcomes are written by the concerned teachers. What I want, what I expect the teacher, the students to be able to do after going through a particular subject. So there may be one more term you may be coming through, that is called PSOs, program specific outcomes. These are like POs only, but they are specific. You see, as I said, POs are not specific to any engineering discipline. They are generic. If I say they should be able to give a design of a complicated program, so computer science people will design a solution for computer science problem. Mechanical engineering people will design a solution for mechanical engineering problem. Electrical engineering people will design a solution for electrical engineering problem, like that, or maybe a multidisciplinary problem. But PSOs are basically your institution, your program in that institution may have a upper hand. That means your students may be good as compared to other institutions in a particular area. Let's say in electronics, somebody is working in VLSI, or in electrical engineering, let's say somebody wants some smart grids. In mechanical engineering, somebody has very strong, has developed program, has developed the skills or giving the projects on automotive engineering. So that you say my students will be able to design automotive systems. That becomes my program specific outcome. Although POs also are requiring that your students will be able to design the systems, but that is generic. But here in PSOs, I am saying my students will be able to design automotive systems. They are better than any other, because I am probably stationed in Gurgaon or Chennai, where there is a lot of automotive industry, and I have access to that industry, right? So that is PSOs. So the top two long-term outcomes are vision, mission, and program educational objectives are called long-term outcomes. That means they are to be achieved in a long-term basis, whereas POs and program COs are attained in the short term, and they are called short-term outcomes. Now, how OBE is different in than normal education? What is that? Input-output based education. If you have any questions, I can go back to questions. But I'm going to questions just now to see the chat box. Okay. Okay, let us devote some time to it. Okay. Somebody said that the speaker to be a bit louder. I am speaking, I think, louder now. Somebody is worried about attendance only. What are we expected to do to mark out attendance only? I guess it could be a separate lecture of Board of Studies and Pedagogy as per UGC. At the moment, it is cut and paste. I don't know what he wants. Sir, can PSOs be written? Can be within 12 POs suggested by NBA? You see, as I said, the 12 POs are irrespective of the discipline. But PSOs are specifics to your, this is the strength of your program actually. What your students will be able to do. Let's say you are strong in R&D. Maybe you can write I will produce very good students who will be able to work on R&D. If we look at the PGDM program with specialization in marketing, finance, operations, and HR, then what? Nothing is written. Can management program form PSOs? PSOs, you are already specialized in HR. Maybe you can have something extra skill, like you can be working on computerized packages, or you are working on analytics somewhere. So you can do that. Can we have either that POs for the PGDM, PSOs for the marketing specialization? You see, there is a different SAR for management programs. There is nothing, no SAR for PGDM. It is for MBA only. And in fact, there is no difference in the duration of PGDM and MBA I have seen from university. So POs will be for the your program only, because if you are, let's say, if you come to MBA, MBA will be generic skills what you are teaching, but at the same time you are teaching a marketing specialization. You can count it in PSOs. It seems to be right to me. So you can write that. What are the number of course outcomes expected at postgraduate management level? COs basically, because it is a subject, complete subject, it has to be 4 to 6 something. Okay, what shall be the main difference between outcomes and objectives? Basically, we have been using outcome and objectives interchangeably, but there is a difference. Objectives are basically, actually what we say is, objectives are teacher-centered, what we want to do, what we want to teach, right? I will teach them in C programming, I will teach them what are the types of variables, right? But when it is outcome, the students will be able to use variables in programming, right? So outcome is what I want, what I expect the students will be able to do. How important to have PSOs? We generally go for POs. You see, normally we have been working on POs only, but if you have some strong aspects, if you are doing generic, let's say generic mechanical engineering degree, you may not PSO, you may not write PSOs, but it is good to have some strength in your program. That 12 POs will always be there, but 1 or 2 PSOs also you can write. PSOs, how many PSOs are required? Maybe 2 to 3, not more. Is it mandatory to have 5 to 6 course outcomes to each course? Can one course have 2 to 3 outcomes? You see, you will have, let's say, 40 hours of 45 hours of teaching. If you can, I don't mind writing a single outcome also, course outcome also. So if you can cover everything in that, you can write 2 to 3 also, but the general norm is 4 to 6. So 2, 3, 4 you can write, there's no problem in that. Somebody says, will the PSOs be in addition to those 12 POs? Yes, PSOs are in addition to the POs. Ethics is covered in POs, so can they be avoided while writing PS? Yeah, you can integrate, because you should not write another PSO for ethics. You can integrate with one of the PSOs if you want. Shouldn't the PEOs of the university be related to the PEOs of the private institution affiliated to the particular university? You see, because it is the same program which university has designed, all these aspects should have been taken care of at the university level. So, but universities are not doing it. We have to do now. Let's say in Maharashtra, I have seen Board of Technical Education has started giving PEOs. But you can add something to that. But if university is giving, you should abide by that. You should go by that, because you cannot have different PEOs than your university PEOs, because curriculum is designed like that only. What shall be the difference between outcome and objectives? Okay, I have discussed. What shall we? If specialization is second year only in 2 years program, how do we write PSOs? You see, you can write second year PSOs based on that. What actually PSOs are basically are not for the year or semester or subject. PSOs are for the program. If I am offering 2 years program, what I my students will specialize after 2 years. If I am offering 3 years diploma, what will be my specialization after 3 years of diploma? I have given that example of automotive design, automotive production. If you are in a, if you have access to these industries, somebody is working in VLSI in electronics. Somebody says I am very good in AI because I have specialized faculty in AI, and my students are doing projects in AI, artificial intelligence. So that becomes my PSO. Somebody has given a good question. Does number of course outcomes vary with the credit weightage? I not in my opinion, because we are concerned with the what we are going to teach to the students. So it should not matter. But if you feel somewhere, because it is a credit system, basically it varies from university to university. How do we allocate credits? It may be three credit, one credit for 1 hour. Somebody says 2 credits for this 1 credit for 2 hours. So it should not vary. The number of COs should not be varying with the credits. Is right. It is not. Somebody says is writing 2 to 3 PSOs mandatory. It is not. It is not. But if you are specializing in something, do write it so that the evaluator will know. Your evaluator will be knowing. Now, next question is another interesting. Is it mandatory to have 12 POs? You see, 12 POs have been given to us by NBA, National Board of Accreditation. I am telling. So if I want to merge some POs, I should have a very good justification for that. When the team comes, I should be able to tell them why I have merged. I did that in my institution, I did that. But I had the justification. But it is better to go by, because they have been defined, very well defined after so much of experience of the people, and there is something called ABET. American, it is in USA. This accreditation board for engineering and technology. So they are also following the same. Is the term able to allowed in terming COs? Because in other instances we have been told that the term able to not accepted in Bloom's taxonomy. Now you see, able after able to, there will be a verb. Able to perform experiment. That will take care of that Bloom's taxonomy part. Okay. That we write only the student will be able to semicolon, then 1, 2, 3, 4 design the solution or write a C program, right? So it is not a part of the CO. This is ability we are doing, right? In Bloom's taxonomy, I agree, because you see, something has to be measurable. When you write something, some capability, it has to be measurable. So it is not a part of the CO. It is the ability. We say they will be capable of doing that. Are inputs defined by syllabus for particular outcome? Somebody, doctor. Anyway, question is, are inputs defined by syllabus for particular outcomes? There are two things actually. One is called curriculum, second is syllabus. But we are not doing that. We have the same meaning for curriculum as well as syllabus. Curriculum is a broader thing actually. So syllabus should define. Syllabus is at the institute level actually. It should be left to the institute. I want that my students should be able to let's say write a program to solve engineering problem. C pro. I will not write even C. The institute will decide whether they want to use C or Python. But then some problems, logistic problems may come. How will you set the question paper? Unless we are trained in that, in taking care of that type of things, we have to probably restrict ourselves to the curriculum and syllabus as the same thing. Should the COs and Bloom's level be mapped according to the academic level of the course across the you see, I will give you an example. If you see the curriculum of diploma programs and engineering degree programs, curriculum is almost same. Curriculum is almost same, but it is the level, academic level, where what we want to do. So it has to be, Bloom's taxonomy should be taken as basis for defining the COs, depending on the what you are rightly written is academic level. But what do you want? Where are we? Are we in the first semester or are we in the fifth semester? Somebody said 12 POs are for UG level. Are they needed for PG? NBA at least doesn't write anything about the POs for PG, but we should define what we want the student to be able to do. Does UGC explicitly define the credit? Can we use the Carnegie unit define a credit 1 hour or 1 hour of instruction per week with an average of 14 to 16 weeks of instruction. You see, we are using that already. We are already using that. We want that almost 45 hours of teaching or contact hours will make one credit. I don't think UGC is defining somewhere. For PG in management, MBA, POs are 12 needed. You see, for PG program in engineering, they don't write anything about POs, but what do we call it is SAR for management is different. So you can define your own POs, not necessarily 12, because we are only a 2 years program. If we have say 6 to 7 POs, then is there any thumb rule for the number of COs? COs are basically based on the course, right? POs, of course, the POs have to be met through COs, but we have to see what we are doing in the course, what we are teaching. The ultimate aim is to attain the POs, that is, students should be able to attain the POs. So, because based on the PO, we have defined the curriculum. Now, from the curriculum, now we have to define the COs, or so that we know what our students will be doing. So, for 30 years course, for 10 years course, 10 hours course, whatever you feel fit, that my objective will be covered. You see, COs will be covered in the next lectures. But I want to tell you is that as some people define COs that unit wise, that let's say there are 8 units in the curriculum and people define 8 COs, right? No, it is not the right way. We have to define COs on the subject basis, overall subject. Why I am teaching them air conditioning? It is not that they should know about the refrigerants. They should know, but it should be covered in somewhere, bigger aspect. That way I can write 80, maybe 40 COs. So we have to keep this subject in mind when you are writing these COs. When defining a CO, can one CO cover multiple cognition levels? Yes, it can. It is how you write the CO. As teachers, we give particular inputs to students when the only way to know outcome is evaluation. So, is it not continuous evaluation must to measure outcomes? Universities have final examination. This is a good question. He says that we have to check the attainment of COs. But universities say 80% of the assessment will be on end term examination and only 20-30% will be given to the CO, this continuous examination, this continuous evaluation. But if you see the new education policy, they have very clearly written that it will be formative evaluation. Formative evaluation is our continuous evaluation. So it has to come. The only thing is, I'm sure I'm getting recorded. We are not doing evaluation honestly when we are coming to continuous evaluation. If we start doing continuous evaluation honestly, objectively, we are subjective in evaluation. So that is the whole problem, because we have lost trust. So that is why we are not being trusted, and university says what we do is that is what we will trust. We will not trust the teachers. We will give a very small 25% of the marks are given only to the teachers, but it is going to change now. And the teachers have to change. It is not only the system will change independent of the teachers. Teachers have to change. Teachers have to be honest and they have to give objective evaluation. Evaluation should be valid. Valid means if I do or you do or a third person does, the result should be same. So now coming back, what will be different in OBE? As I said, the curriculum will be different. Teaching learning approach will be different. Assessment and evaluation will be different, and there will be a continuous quality improvement. Right? We will be analyzing the results. It is not that the result has come and we have forgotten. Somebody has failed, somebody has passed, somebody has got 90%. After that, we don't bother. But in outcome-based education, we will analyze. We will analyze and take action. Now, how will be the curriculum different? The curriculum is based on program outcomes. That means what we want the students should be able to do. That will be the basis for defining the curriculum, for making the curriculum. Active involvement of the stakeholders. The stakeholders will be actively involved. Who are the stakeholders of the system? You as teachers are the stakeholders of the system. Students whose future is at stake, they are the stakeholders. Parents who are spending money and whose wards are handed over to you, they are the stakeholders. Your alumni is the stakeholder. Government is the stakeholder. Your employers are the stakeholder. We should at least involve. We are not involving the industry into neither making the curriculum, nor in the offering of the program, nor in the assessment of the program. I know there are issues with it, right? Somebody will say that curriculum is given by university, so university should involve. At the institute level, I as a subject coordinator, I should have contacts in the industry, and I should ask people, I should request industry people to associate with the institute with my subject to give some lectures so that my students and me as a teacher, I know something, what is happening in the, actually, what is the new in my field. Content should be dynamic. We are not changing the content, right? We are teaching same old things which I studied. So let us make content dynamic. Maybe we can have some fixed contents, some part we can have flexible, so that the teacher is at the liberty to teach whatever is new in the technology. Industry involvement, I had told you. COs defined for each course. Each course will have course outcomes defined and well-defined practical tasks. Practical tasks will be well-defined. Why there will be COs for the practical tasks also? Why should they do these tasks? What will they learn? Teachers will be empowered teachers. It will be their decision whether they want to go to the first to the practical classes, or they want to take the theory class. Let's say I want to show them a lathe machine. Now, these poor students who have just joined, they do not know what a lathe machine is. And I start talking about the spindle. I start talking about the tool post. They have not seen it. They are not able to visualize it. So if I take them to the workshop first and show them what actually the components are, what an IC engine is, what a robot is, then I teach them theory, probably it may be much more effective. So it will be left to the teacher. The HOD will not be after the teacher that you have not taken the class. Of course, the teachers will have to be responsible. Empowered teachers. Flexible teaching learning processes. You can embed, you can join two methods. You can follow chalk and board, or you can have a PowerPoint projection, or you can integrate some simulations in your lectures. Focus on development of knowledge, skill, and attitude. It is not rote learning. It is not for just passing the examination. We want to make the students learn. Teacher role more as a team member, leader rather than individual. That means he will not be just speaking and the students will be learning. No, there can be flipped classrooms where students can be asked to study something and you can discuss in the class next day. You can discuss the doubts of the students. I know there are issues, students who are not still coming, but once we change the system, once we as teachers become more serious in the classes, I think we will be able to attract the teachers to the classes. Continuous record keeping and mentoring the students. Record keeping is very important in outcome-based education, and based on the records, mentoring the students. Tackling their professional and personal problems also. I said earlier also that Bloom's taxonomy is used extensively for planning of the teaching learning objectives. It has to be, you cannot escape that. Unfortunately, we engineers are not taught Bloom's taxonomy at any stage, whereas B.Ed people are taught, M.Ed teachers are people are taught. But once we have come to the teaching profession, we must study what Bloom's taxonomy says and how to put it practically in our teaching learning process. Assessment and evaluation will change. What will happen? You will have a very well-defined assessment system, right? Why say well-defined and documented? Because it has to be a valid system. Irrespective of who does it, the outcome should be same. Focus on attainment of outcomes rather than comparing the students. We want that everybody should learn how to perform a task. So we are not comparing the students. We want that everybody should learn to a minimum level. Criteria-based assessment rather than norm-based assessment. Criteria-based means we have given, let's say, 12 criteria, 12 POs. The assessment will be based on those 12 POs, not then on marks. That okay, 60% marks first class, 50% marks second class, 90% marks A++ grade, 80% A+ grade. No, we are not giving grades. We are telling that okay, if you have to give the grades for that, you can have rubrics. But idea is that we want to say that let's say that one criteria is that he should be able to work as a team member as well as lead a team as the leader. Now that is one criteria. We will assess this. It is not that we will assess this at the end of the semester or end of the course. No, we can be continuously assessing. For that, we have to design assessment system. Evaluation system also we have designed. We have to design by giving them some group tasks where some people will become leader, others will become team members, right? Similarly, soft skills. Now, I am not very much in favor of teaching soft skills, although we are teaching it because the students are not there. But I want that we should embed the soft skills into all subjects. Let them give a seminar. Everybody give a seminar. Give them assignments and tell them that your English is also a matter for assessment. This is also one of the criteria or one of the aspects which will be assessed. Development of rubrics for assessment. Rubrics you will come to know during this week. That means we can say, okay, he is just good. The students can, let's say I want the design. I want to design a component. I say he is just good, he is very good, he is excellent, or he is poor. So we can just define when we will say the student is poor, we will say when will we say when the student is good, or when will we say the student is excellent. Assessment to ensure attainment of outcomes rather than failing or passing a student. The idea is not fail or pass a student. Idea is to make the student learn, perform. So assessment will be basically to see that the student performs, he attains the outcome, he is able to design the solution rather than failing or passing. As somebody said, this will come from formative assessment or continuous assessment. You see, continuous assessment is like making a vegetable, cooking a vegetable in your house. You put some masala, put some salt, and taste it. If it is not up to the taste, as per your liking, then you add something more. But what are you doing in assessment? We are just giving them a test, and if somebody fails, he fails. If somebody passes, he passes. Whereas formative assessment has much bigger role to play in your teaching learning process. Formative assessment will tell you what is good in the students and what are the missing links in the students' learning. At the same time, formative assessment will tell you where as a teacher you are good and what are your shortcomings as a teacher. No comparison between the students. There is no comparison between the students. I want that all the students should be able to do a particular task. Students know the assessment criteria in advance. The students will know the assessment criteria in advance. That this will be the assessment criteria. It is not be a sudden thing that they will get a question. And you see, the students are now used to 5 out of 8 questions. You give them one question that okay, you take your book and you do the design work. This single question only, designing something under certain condition. The students will not be able to do it because they are used to, they have been told that they will be asked to do 5 out of 8 questions. I tried that. Students do not want to do that. They say, no, this has not been taught. At the very outset, they will say this has not been taught. But if I tell them in the beginning itself that there may be a single question also, scoring 100 marks, then they should be able to do it. Okay, teachers, I have told you, empower teachers with autonomy in delivering of course and assessment, variety of teaching learning approaches, formative criteria referenced assessment, and it is not only the teachers, the students also have to be performing at a better pace and doing better things. So, as I said, they should be proactive students. Students should also actively participate. It is not that they are not attending the classes, they are accepting the work and they are copying the assignments. No, we'll do assignments seriously. Project work will be innovative. Project work is one component in engineering which has been designed, which has been kept in the curriculum so that the students will be able to use whatever they have learned during the last, let's say, 3.5 years. In the 4th year, you will run the project. Of course, there are institutions which are giving project work throughout from the second year itself. But what is happening? The students are not doing the project work as it was supposed to be. They are not questioning. They are just what we call is making the jugaad, and either they are copying from somewhere or they are buying the project from somewhere or they are doing it without application of engineering. That's in mechanical engineering I have seen. They will say, I asked the students that, okay, why this plate is 10 millimeter thick? Have you done the finite element analysis of this? They said no. I said, then I asked why not 8 millimeters? They will say, sir, 10 millimeter is easily available in the market, so I have taken it. Even if that answer they have, after doing analysis, they have analyzed the thing using some software, but let's say the software gave that, okay, you use 8 millimeter thick plate, but then they come, sir, 8 millimeter is not available in the market, I will use 10 millimeters. That is acceptable. But without doing analysis, they are doing it. So that why is missing? Why is missing? Focus will be on self-learning, right? So I will come to SAR, but let me go back to the chat again. Okay, interesting things are coming. Professor K. Sharma. He says, I have a look at the BITS pedagogy with no attendance, no final tests. Choose your own timetable and teachers. Surprise test, etc. It is the best in the globe. I have seen IITs as well. BITS. This is Professor K. Sharma. Anyway, they have developed a system. I am not saying BITS IITs are bad or BITS is bad, but they have developed a system where they are able to implement it. We are not trying it. You are giving a very good solution. Maybe we can study that. We should study that and try to implement it. So it will be good if you can copy some good things. It says in private university institutions, we do not have retentivity of teachers. As such, the continuity, affinity, and the outcome suffers. I agree with you, Dr. K. Sharma again. I agree with you, Kalan Saab. We do not have retentivity because we are not looking after the teachers. When a team comes, when you apply for NBA accreditation, there is weightage to teacher retention also. There are some good practices. There are some bad practices that the teachers are not being paid as per, let's say, the rules of AICTE. Many institutions cannot afford that, and there are things like these teachers are being relieved after the semester. It is both ways. It is not only the teachers are responsible or universities are responsible. The system as such, it has to improve. I am not in favor of not giving the requisite pay to the students, to the teachers. Salary should be commensurate with their qualification, and they should be looked after well. There are other facilities. There are institutions, private institutions where nobody leaves. So if a study is made, you will find that the teachers are looked after in private institutions and universities. But there are other way what you are writing, question mark. In order to deliver the indicated roles of the teachers effectively, there needs to be very healthy student-teacher ratio. For a class where a course is taught to 75 students by a single teacher, this might be difficult. I agree, because you cannot have one-to-one interaction. For that, we used to have tutorials. Now this tutorial things, I don't know why people have done away with. The tutorial classes were meant only for giving personalized attention to the students. So that has basically this being discontinued, and I have seen many institutions where tutorial class is there in the timetable, but this is taken as a regular class only. If the students are not proactive, what to do? We have to ensure that the students realize that they will get something new in the class. If the teacher is also coming with a book in his hand and he's reading or writing, he's reading from the book and writing on the blackboard, the students will not come, because that they can do from the books also. They can read. And many times I have seen, because I have worked as a principal of a government college, students are sharper than teachers in many cases. What is student counseling actually means? I think it should come. We are coming to the SAR, we will discuss. Even for taking tutorial classes by splitting the batch, we need classrooms and teachers for parallel lessons. Very valid. Why people have converted the tutorial classes into a single class is because if you converted class of 60 into 3 tutorial classes, you need 3 teachers and 3 classrooms. So either the classrooms are not there, or the teachers are not there, or the timetable is not proper. So I agree with you. It is maybe the reason, because they want to save on teachers, they don't have classrooms. So that is the issue. Somebody's asked what is the relation between the teaching load and implementing OBE and institution. You see, I don't think we need to go beyond the AICTE norms of teaching load. And once the system is in place, somebody will say that outcome-based education will increase the paperwork. That, of course, the computer is there. We can computerize it. And first 1 or 2 years, you will find it difficult because it has to be some innovative problems and problem-solving techniques. After that, your mind will also start working with that, and the faculty can also be trained. Faculty can also be trained to take this type of work. Still, we are not, the faculty itself is not trained about on OBE. Going beyond, away from the topic, the MOOC will play a vital role in assessing the students. Please explain. How MOOC will assessment? You see, again, it is teacher dependent. Okay. If the teacher knows how to frame the questions, it will assess. Otherwise, it will be again 5 out of 8. Unless the teacher is trained to make the question to get the best out of the student, then only it will help in assessing the students properly. Okay, just one. My questions are jumping. How the somebody has written think, pair and share. Good, very good. How to keep document record of role play? You can just have in your if you are doing it as a part of your subject, you can have it in your course file. That we have done this activity. That is all. Somebody, Rakesh Sharma again, Colonel Rakesh Sharma. The NBA should not be inspecting, but it should be at the selection level for VCs. Government VCs are. I cannot at this platform. I will not comment on this, Colonel Sharma. Sorry. So, Dr. Sharma, you are with me on what I said. Okay, thank you very much. And let me go back. I'm only halfway. I'm enjoying your questions. Now, as I said, there are 10 criteria for. Usually, somebody will be explaining all this in detail. I'm just covering the some aspects, overall aspects of each criteria. First criteria is vision, mission, and program educational objectives. I told you what is vision. I told you what is mission and what is program educational objectives. So one is you should have defined the vision and mission of the department and the institution. First is you should stop from the. If you go back to that OBE chart. First is you have to define the vision and mission, then vision and mission of the, then maybe PEOs, then vision and mission of the, from the institution vision and mission, you have to come to the department vision and mission. You see, department vision and mission cannot be a deviation from the institution vision and mission, because institution vision and mission has to be attained through the department vision and mission, right? So we have to see that they are in line. And vision and mission should be not be anything and everything, whatever it comes to your mind. No, vision and mission, there are rules for writing, there are guidelines for writing, and you should be working towards that. If you write, my vision is that I will produce R&D engineers from my institution. Your curriculum should reflect that. Your faculty expertise should reflect that. Your projects work you are doing, that should reflect that. So it is not writing the vision and mission. It is working towards that. That is what is seen actually by the NBA team. Program educational objectives I told you. And process for defining vision and mission of the department and PEOs of the program. That means how are we doing it? Is it one or two faculty members are sitting, or there is a process? If there is a process, what is it? How many people you are involving? Who is the approving authority? Who is first making it? Whether it is discussed with the faculty, whether it is discussed with the stakeholders. So all that you have to see. Publication and dissemination of vision, mission, and PO. Is it that we have written the vision and mission and put it in a file? No. my all stakeholders, my faculty members, my students, my industry, they should know what is my vision and mission. So it had to be disseminated properly. Consistency of PEOs with mission of the department. We have defined that we will achieve the vision by following this mission, these steps. You see, vision will be a statement, whereas mission is the discrete steps that I will do this, I will do this, I will do this. Now we have written the vision, we have written the mission, we have written the PEOs. When I write PEOs, I say that my students will be able to do such and such things after 4 or 5 years of sorry, 4 or 5 years of passing out. Is there anything from the vision which can map with the PEOs? So mapping of the PEOs with the mission is also required because everything has to be in line. Criteria 2 is program, curriculum and teaching learning process. You see, these criteria are different for all 10 criteria are there for all the colleges. Now I'm introducing another term to you. There are two types of institutions. I'm talking about engineering colleges, UG engineering colleges. There are colleges which are part of any university. There are colleges which are autonomous bodies. There are colleges which are called deemed to be universities. All these colleges have control over their curriculum. They can design curriculum, they can review curriculum. But there are other colleges which are affiliated colleges. They cannot design curriculum, right? They cannot review their curriculum. They can just request the university that, okay, please do this. Either earlier cloud computing was there, not there. Earlier electrical vehicles were not there in the curriculum. Please do that because there are a lot of jobs, there are a lot of employers who want these skills. So they can write to the university. Now the first set of universities, colleges who have control over their curriculum, they are called Tier 1. Tier 1 institutions. The second type of institutions which are affiliated to the universities or diploma colleges which are affiliated to the State Board of Technical Education, they are called Tier 2 institutions. So distribution of marks within the criteria may be different between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 institutions, but the steps are same. Now, talking about the program curriculum. Now, when we are talking about Tier 2 institutions, they don't talk about the design of the curriculum. They don't talk about the components of the curriculum. They only say whether your curriculum is capable of meeting the POs and PSOs. Is it that your curriculum has been designed that it meets all the POs and PSOs? If no, then what are the curricular gaps? Right? Maybe I want that in mechanical engineering, I wanted that there should be additive manufacturing, but it is not there in the university curriculum, and the university is not ready to change the curriculum so early. So I have identified a curriculum gap, that this is the gap. Or within a subject also, in the conventional subjects, let's say you are not teaching some theories. So you can note down and say, this was the gap and how do I cover? How did I cover this? Maybe I covered this by calling a person from industry or requesting my friend who knows this subject, or I myself covered this subject topic. Content beyond syllabus, steps taken to get identified, gaps included in the curriculum. That means that we have identified the curricular gaps in the first step, but what action we take? I cannot change the curriculum because I am an affiliated institution, but I should write to the chairman board of studies, through my principal, through my head of the department, through my dean academics, and at the same time, university has not taken any action, so I should have taken some action at the local level, at the college level, to get that part of the curriculum covered, because I know that there is a lot of demand for, let's say, machine learning. So what I did, I introduced my students to machine learning. I told them what are the resources available so that the students can learn. Teaching learning process. What are the processes followed to ensure improved quality of the teaching and learning? क्या कर रहे हैं आप? चॉक एंड बोर्ड पर कर रहे हैं, और आर यू टेकिंग द बुक एंड just copying it? Are you giving some innovative exercises? Right. Initiative to improve the quality of semester tests and assignment, very important. Semester tests. What NBA people want is, I go as NBA expert, I go as chairman also. What they want, that your formative evaluation, when you are talking the in semester tests, they should be aligned to the COs. If I am writing a question, I should know which CO it will cover. Because otherwise I should not be asking. I should not be asking the students who invented computer. Nothing. They should know it, that's okay. But I am not testing anything. I am just testing the memory of the students in this. I don't want it to be a question. So question has to be done very seriously, and there are special programs connected on setting up of question paper and evaluating the answer sheets. Quality of experiments. What type of experiments you are doing? There is a problem in the evaluation of the lab work. Teachers are not evaluating in time. Students are not doing it. And if the teachers are evaluating, they just put a tick and leave it. They are not finding out any faults. If there are any mistakes, they are not pointing it out. Quality of students' projects and report writing. What type of projects you are doing? And how is the presentation? Do you have a format for writing it, or just students go, you just tell the student that there is a project and you have to submit it during the semester? The student come one day before the Viva and you just sign it and that is over. That is what is happening. You should have a system of allocating the projects, monitoring the subjects, evaluating the projects, and report writing. How this presentation is made by the students. Industry interaction and community services. What is the industry interaction in your program, and any community services you are doing? Maybe you are conducting some programs for the normal community, maybe at the basic level, maybe in word processing itself. Information access facilities and student-centric learning initiatives. What have you done? Is there a digital library? Is the digital material available on Wi-Fi to the students so that they can study at their places? Any student-centric learning initiatives you have taken? New initiatives for embedding professional skills, and anything new you have done. Maybe you have started using some CAL packages. Maybe you have a AR VR lab so that people can get into the thing and see. Co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Maybe somebody will talk about all this. Course outcomes and program outcomes. I have talked to you what are course outcomes, how COs contribute to the POs and PSOs, how attainment of COs, POs, and PSOs is calculated. How do you calculate the attainment of all this? Results of calculation of attainment. That means you have calculated the attainment of POs and COs and PSOs, of course COs also. And what are the results? I wanted that my PO1 should have attainment of, out of 3, on a scale of 3, I should have 2.4. But I have reached only 1.6. What action I have taken on that? This is criteria 1, 2, 3 are basically on outcome-based education. They talk about lot of things about outcome-based education, and there can be some subjective marking in criteria 1, 2, 3. But in criteria 4, everything about the students is there. Enrollment ratio. What is the percentage of students being enrolled as against the approved intake? Success rate in stipulated time. How many students are passing out the program in the given, let's say 3 years or 4 years? academic performance in first year, second year, and third year. How many students are passing from first to second, second to third, and third to fourth? Placement and higher studies and entrepreneurship. Professional activities. I'm not explaining anything because this is all calculation basis. Professional studies, student chapters, and organizing technical events. You see, you have professional studies, you have professional student chapters also in your organization. Having these things, professional studies and student chapters in your organization, in your institution, is one point. Second is, what are the activities they are doing? What events you have done under those societies? That is more important. Just that I have a ASME chapter, doesn't matter. But what activities? What are the benefits? How my students have benefited from this chapter? Publication of technical magazines, newsletters. If you are doing it, if you don't want to do it physically, you can go for a e-magazine where students can contribute and see. You see, it is not necessary that you people will innovate new things. If they come across something, let's say in a newspaper, they can discuss that also on the e-newsletters. Interstate institution, if you go through the SAR, you will find that there are marks for inter-institute, there are marks for interstate or at the national level event participated by your students. Criteria 4 was everything about students, and criteria 5 is everything about the faculty. Numbers available, cater ratio, student faculty ratio, qualification of the faculty, retention, as I said, faculty development, programs attended by the institution, research publications, research projects, basically funded research projects, externally funded research projects, and research publications also in referred journals. It is not that I conduct a conference and all the 30 faculty members of my institution are publishing the papers in that. Product development, consultancy, manufacturing contracts, and testing contracts. Anything consultancy, you are doing it. And faculty performance appraisal. That means, are you appraising the student and the faculty every year? And it is not only appraising the faculty, it is what action you are taking if somebody is not performing, or what action you are taking if somebody is performing very well. It may not be possible in government institutions, but in private institutions, it is possible to reward the faculty for good work done. This is facilities and technical support staff. This is about the classrooms, about the labs, about the equipment, about the technical manpower, about the maintenance of labs, additional facilities created during the basically last 3 years, and language lab. Criteria 7 is basically nothing new. It will come from the previous criteria only. That means action taken based on the results of evaluation of each of the POs and PSOs. Target versus attainment. That means we had fixed a target that criteria 2 will be attained to a level of 2 on a scale of 3. But I have been able to achieve only up to 1. So what action you have taken? Right? Did I review the curriculum? Did I see the teaching learning process? Or did I supplement my teaching learning process with additional inputs? Improvement in placement and higher studies, academic performance in final year, quality of students admitted to the program. That means it will come, quality of students will come from the, let's say, ranking in a competitive entrance examination. Internal academic audits to review complete academics and to implement corrective actions on continuous basis. That means, do you have an internal academic audit? You can create a committee, but unless you have the documents to prove that they have done some work, they have done the audit and somebody has reviewed it and some corrective action has been taken, so you will not be rewarded for that otherwise. New facility created in the program, and you have created new facility, to which PO it is contributing. You have to see. Criteria 8 is basically everything about the first year, about the faculty, about the students, about the POs, about the labs, everything about the first year. Criteria 9 is student support system. Do you have mentoring system? Do you have feedback analysis and reward corrective action? You see, feedback is very important. There are two types of feedbacks. One is feedback about the teacher by the student. Second is feedback on the facilities. Now, I have seen that people take feedback. There are heaps of papers, but they don't analyze. They don't do any analysis, and there is no action taken. So whenever you take feedback, you have to analyze it and you have to take action on this. Let's say coming to feedback on facilities. There was a feedback by the students that you don't have a water cooler, sufficient number of water coolers in the organization, and students want cold water during the summers. So what action you have to take? You have to say, okay, earlier we had only one water cooler, we have installed 2 more water coolers at different places. So that action taken is complete. Students say that there is no proper lighting in the classrooms. You take action and report it. That is all, record it. Career guidance, training and placement. Do you have a career guidance and training and placement cell? What action they have taken? What is the facilities that you have in that? And this is more about governance, institutional support and financial resources. This is government institution will not have a GB if they are government institution. If they are autonomous bodies, then they will have a governing body. So it is basically composition as per AICT or UGC is it there? How meetings are scheduled, agenda and minutes of the meeting, right? And the quality of decisions taken by the BOG or governing body. We have to see what type of decision they are taking. I have seen in one of the organization, the governing body minutes say that 3rd year of the diploma students will go on industrial visit on such and such day. Now this is not a governing body decision. This is left to the class teacher, not even to the head of the department or principal. So just see what are the decisions taken. Do you have proper agenda and minutes are minuted or not? Service rules, availability and transparency. Government people will have the government rules, but in private and self-financing institutions, one is the availability. Do you have any service rules? If you have, do people know about it? Does the faculty know about it? That they are entitled to 8 casual leaves in a year. There is a maternity leave in the institution. Do they know it? Or is it pick and choose that if I want, I will give it to some person, and if I don't like a person, I will not give the leave to him. Recruitment rule, recruitment process. Do you have a defined recruitment process? Are you following? Or it is just pick and choose that you catch hold of something from somebody from the market and say you are appointed professor, or you are following a process. Decentralization, administrative and financial working. Is there a centralized system that only the management can do it? Financial resources or administrative resources, or is it the head of the department who can use some administrative powers, who is given some decentralization? Financial working. I have seen in many organizations, they say, okay, my head of the department is allowed 10,000 rupees at a time, for which he is given and impressed, and he doesn't have to go to the principal for taking permission. But when you see, okay, when was the last you have used this facility? If they are not used, that means they have just created a paper. They have to show to the team. They are not actually allowing the decentralization of financial powers. Budget at the institute level. Budget at the department level. You see, how are you planning? That is very, very big thing which is missing is planning. How do you plan the development? Many times we talk to the people, especially in self-financing institutions only. How do you plan the budget? They say the HOD comes with the requirement and principal says I allow, that is all. Whereas in let's say in my institution, we plan that next year we will work on such and such lab. So we make a budget, estimated budget, and send it to the accounts people. They compile it. There is a budget committee which sees the budget requirement of all the departments, and it is given maybe 1 year back, 1 year earlier. The budget which we will be needing next year, that is already given to the account section. So you plan. It is not that all of a sudden you say I want 1 lakh rupees, you are given, that is all. And is it adequate? There are different expenditure heads like training, R&D, consumables, library. What is the allocation and what is the utilization? Many times we have seen that allocation is shown up to 25 lakhs, but when you come to utilization, it is 25,000 rupees in a year. Library and internet availability as per AICTE guidelines. So this is all about SAR. The complete SAR I cannot cover in this session. I could not because somebody else will be talking about all the other criterias. Okay, I go back to the chat box. In the board of studies, especially for engineering, curriculum should have a few hours on beyond the course, curricula like immersive techniques in ME, mechanical engineering, CSE, ECE. Only the newly graduates. Okay, the newly graduated is unaware of the latest. Okay, let us think. Okay, good input. You see, and ideally, I am involved in curriculum development also. We keep only 30 to 30 hours of contact time in a week for the classes. The rest of the 7-8 hours are given to the students for student-centered activities. If you can use that part, you can have some invited lectures that what is immersive technology, what is machine learning, what is deep learning, depending upon the courses where they will be using it. What is additive manufacturing, what is clean technologies, what is clean construction. All that can be done in that. Somebody has asked a question, can you please show some light on how to calculate the attainment of COs, POs and PSOs? It will need a full lecture, and I think you have in this. Grover will come, I think he will talk on this. If it is not there, I will request Madam Ritika to call me again during this week, and I will discuss this, because it cannot be discussed at this stage in a short time.
Sure, sir.
Those institutions which were established before the introduction of OBE in India, how should they approach in defining vision, mission, and PEOs? Perhaps in most definitively fitting the V&M and PEOs to the continue. Yes, I agree, because when these institutions were started, this concept was not there. We were not following in India. So we are now fitting. We have a cap and we are finding how to fit it. So we have to now see how do we write the vision and mission and how much changes we can make. We have to adopt the OBE, so we have to make some changes in the system also. So you are very right that we have to now write, we have to adopt the system, and we have to we cannot leave it as it is. We have to make the changes as per the requirements of OBE. Yeah, the NEP is mum on this qualitative aspect of higher education. Oh, it is not. Mr. Vishwanath, it is not. It is talking about quality. It is talking about accreditation. It is talking about graded autonomy based on your quality, how you approach. So NEP is not silent on this. Again, something on calculation of attainment of COs and POs. I think you have to wait, and somebody will talk on this. I can talk, but there's no time about this now. In government-funded institute, how the NBA team looked into the matter if SFR is less than the required number. Government-funded institutions sometimes struggle to attain the desired number of SFR. You see, whether it is government or private, NBA is NBA, SFR is SFR. If it is not there, and you are not given. If you are getting less marks, you see there is something like, let's say in engineering college, they say it should be maximum allowed for the visit itself is 1:25. If it is more than 1:1, let's say it goes to 1:26, the visit will not be there. You will not be allowed to apply for the accreditation. So it is not government or self-financing. It has to be same parameters. See, some senses, some examples of decentralization. Let's say you have the casual leave record. You have sometimes it happens that you can even for casual leave your faculty has to go to principal, right? You have the let's say you want to send for 1 day training somewhere. Maybe there is no financial implications. You can send it. Right? Financial decentralization, let's say for running a lab, you want to buy some consumables. It is not that you run to the principal for 2,500 rupees. No, the power is with you. Like that, you can have these things. An institute have its own budget heads. You see, somebody is asking, can the institute have its own budget heads? There are budget heads under which NBA wants that you should have allocation. I know government doesn't give money under so many heads. So what you can do is, government will give you money as lump sum. That okay, this institution is given 3 crores for under plan expenses. But at the institute level, you can have a letter from the principal, not just for showing to the committee, visiting committee, but actually for spending that okay, we will allocate such and such funds to the such and such activities. EO attainment can be cumulative of course level attainment plus initiatives plus events and exit interview. You see, there are 2 types of actually attainment we take. One is called direct attainment, second is indirect attainment. So direct attainment is what you are doing in the institute, conducting the tests and all. Indirect can be, let's say, exit interviews, employee surveys, alumni surveys, all that can be indirect assessment. NBA or NAC looks at past 3 to 5 years, and OBE has been recently introduced. You see, I agree with you because people who wanted to go for NBA, they started OBE maybe 5-6 years back. So it is not that you can start OBE because NBA will want, let's say, at minimum 3 years of data, past data. So if you want to go for NBA accreditation, start immediately. Maybe after 2 years you can apply. Somebody says, Dr. Kuljeet, is there flexibility in phasing OBE or at one go? You have to start somewhere. You see, you cannot, let's say, you start with the first year, then as the curriculum, so then you implement it in the next 4 years, then only you will be able to do it. It cannot be in one go. You start with one batch. Okay, there are no questions. So if there is any question, please do let me know before I close.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session. Any other participant has a question? They may unmute themselves and ask. Sir, I think we have no more questions. Thank you so much. It was actually a wonderful session. You wonderfully handled all participants' queries. I request Huda sir to kindly present you with the certificate as a simple token of remembrance from our side for this wonderful session. Sir, Huda sir is there.
Pavla sir, good evening to you.
Good evening, sir. Very good evening. Thank you for again giving me a chance to talk to your participants.
Yet another session. So much and accepting my your experience with all the participants. Only to remind you to remember you have been part of this wonderful program in which participants from all parts of the country are attending it. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. There's Mr. Sharma is there. Has any queries, do call me on our phone. My phone, I think I have given my phone to you. It was displayed on the first slide.
Sir, no issues. I shall be sharing your slides with the participants.
Okay.
So they will all have it.
So my request to all the participants is that they can call me, they can email me. I'll be too happy to respond to your queries. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, Brother Hoda. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
It was our privilege having you in the program. And dear participants, I think you might have gone through the documents which have been circulated to you by Dr. Ritika. In that there are rules for assessment, then assignment sheet. So please pay attention to the assignment sheet, and I will request to all of you that as part of continuous assessment, keep filling assignment sheet on daily basis soon after the sessions. That will help you to get the desired outcome which we anticipated for this particular program. Second is multiple choice question MCQ test. So go through the schedule and keep on preparing yourself. If there are any questions, you can ask those questions in any of the sessions to Dr. Ritika. And if there is any other problem, even my number, Dr. Ritika number, and mobile number of all the team members are there in the WhatsApp group. You can talk to them, call them, send WhatsApp any moment of time. Never ever hesitate to ask any query. And I will request to all of you to consider this platform as the most productive platform only when if you ask questions with all the instructors, all the faculty members. So Dr. Ritika, please ensure that last at least 15 minutes are reserved for question answer, right?
Yes, sir. Today's session, both the speakers took the questions during the session itself.
Okay.
And
okay, thank you so much. First day is completed, 4 more days. Let's participate, get engaged so that the maximum learning should happen and we should be in a position to reach at least of 90%. That is our benchmark, that 90% attainment should come. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best and good night. We'll meet tomorrow.